Listen to me very carefully. This is not one of those warnings you can afford to ignore, because the people who hurt you the most are never the ones who yell the loudest. They're the ones who whisper, the ones who sit close, the ones who say all the right things while draining the light out of your life one breath at a time. They don't come at you with knives. They come with advice, with concern, with a kind smile that feels wrong, but you can't explain why. That's how it begins. That's how they start to win. You feel it long before you can name it. That shift, that weight in your chest when they enter the room, that voice in your gut that whispers something is off, but your mind tries to rationalize it away because they haven't done anything obviously wrong. They've just made small comments, subtle corrections, a look here, a pause there, but somehow you feel smaller after each interaction, a little less clear, a little less like yourself. This is not paranoia. This is not you being too sensitive. This is your inner wisdom screaming for your attention. But if you've been taught to distrust that voice your whole life, you'll overlook the signs, you'll excuse the discomfort, you'll call it love when it's control. You'll call it support when it's sabotage. And by the time you realize what's happening, you've already been molded into a version of yourself you barely recognize. The scariest thing about psychological warfare is not how it starts, it's how normal it feels, how much it mimics affection, how easily it fits into your daily life. They'll ask about your dreams not to support them, but to measure how far they need to go to make you abandon them. They'll say they're proud of you, but always in a way that reminds you how far you still have to go. They'll compare you to others, but only to highlight your inadequacy, never to inspire, only to control. And yet you trust them because they're close, because they once made you feel seen, because they say they care. But you forget this truth. Care without respect is manipulation. Attention without safety is surveillance. And closeness without freedom is a cage. So listen to me very carefully. If there's someone in your life who always makes you second guess yourself, who drains your energy while smiling in your face, who claims to love you while shrinking your spirit, this is not a misunderstanding. It's not just bad chemistry. It's intentional. It's a slow unraveling. And the sooner you see it for what it is, the sooner you reclaim everything they're trying to take away. This is not just about them. It's about you. It's about protecting your light before it's dimmed beyond recognition. Because the ones who truly love you will never make you question your worth. They will reflect it back to you so clearly that you start to believe in it again. They will speak life into your vision, not fear into your dreams. And if that's not what you're getting, then what you're living in is not love. It's poison, dressed up in politeness, sugar-coated sabotage. And the only antidote is awareness. We begin there, always, with the truth you already know but haven't dared to say out loud. Are you ready to see it? Then let's continue. Hatred doesn't always come from anger or pain. Sometimes it comes from fear, the kind of fear that hides behind a smile, the fear that shows up when your presence reminds someone of everything they're not willing to become. You don't have to say a word for them to feel it. Your light speaks for you, and that light makes them feel small. Not because you intended it, but because they haven't learned how to grow with you. And when someone feels small next to you, they don't always rise. Sometimes they shrink you, not to punish you, but to protect themselves from facing the gap between who they are and who they could be. That is where silent hatred begins. Not with rage, but with resentment wrapped in kindness. They compliment you with hesitation. They support you with limits. They show up not to lift you, but to contain you. And because you trust them, you don't question it. You interpret it as care. You welcome their opinion. You internalize their doubts. Silent hatred is most dangerous when it comes from someone close. Because when harm wears the face of love, you stop defending yourself. You open your heart. You soften your guard. And in that space, they don't need to attack. They just need to suggest. Maybe you're not ready. Maybe you're being unrealistic. Maybe you should be more grateful. Maybe this dream is too much. And just like that, the door between you and your potential begins to close. Not with force, but with words so familiar you forget to challenge them. The psychology behind this is not complicated. It's rooted in survival. If they can't grow with you, they must keep you small. Not because you're unworthy, but because your expansion threatens their comfort. And people protect comfort more fiercely than they protect truth. If they let you rise, they have to look at why they haven't. And not everyone is ready to face that. So instead, they bury you slowly, one doubt at a time, one dismissive nod, one subtle shift in tone, until one day you forget how it felt to believe in yourself without their permission. This is not just silent hatred, it's strategic. And its power lies in how invisible it becomes once you've accepted it as normal. They never walk in declaring war. They come softly, dressed in concern, speaking the language of love, carefully disguised as protection. They don't attack you with insults. They disarm you with phrases that sound helpful. I'm just being honest. I only want what's best for you. I don't want to see you get hurt. And because you crave connection, you don't see the hook inside those words. You take them as truth. You accept the criticism hidden in the compliment. You absorb the fear behind their advice and call it wisdom, but it isn't wisdom, it's projection. It's their fear of failure transferred to you so they don't have to feel alone in it. The strategy is always the same. Get close enough to influence how you think, then slowly redefine what success means for you until their limitations become your ceiling. They start small. A comment about how ambitious you are, a laugh at the wrong moment, a question about your priorities masked as concern for your well-being. And you begin to wonder if you're being too much, if you should tone it down, if maybe they see something you don't. That's the trick. They don't stop you by blocking your path. They stop you by shifting your internal compass so you no longer walk with clarity. You begin second-guessing your direction. You hesitate where you used to act boldly. You seek reassurance for dreams you once held with fire. And they never have to say, stop, you'll do that part yourself. They'll nod quietly, satisfied, watching you shrink into the version of you that keeps them comfortable. This is not love. This is management. This is emotional manipulation at a high level. And the worst part is they look like they care, they show up, they stay close, but proximity is not proof of loyalty. Some people stay near not to help you rise, but to make sure you don't rise without them. And the longer you wait for them to celebrate you, the longer you stay stuck. So here's the shift. Start listening to the tone, not just the words. Start watching how your body responds to their presence. Are you free or are you careful? Are you inspired or are you small? Real love doesn't make you question your value. It reminds you of it. Real connection doesn't shrink your vision. It expands it. And if you've forgotten how that feels, you're not alone. That's why spaces like Daily 1% Impact exist. Not to give you permission, but to remind you that you never needed it. Growth isn't loud, it's intentional. It begins when you recognize the difference between what holds you and what holds you back. Now you know. So keep walking. There's a moment in every toxic dynamic when something shifts inside you. It doesn't happen in an instant. It begins so quietly that you barely notice. You start questioning yourself in places where you once stood with confidence. You begin holding back your voice, hiding your excitement, softening your light just to avoid conflict. But peace that costs your voice is not peace, it's control. What happens here is more than confusion. It's the slow rewriting of your reality. They don't need to yell or force their opinions. They only need access to your emotions. Once they get that, they can twist your memories, make you wonder if what you felt was real. They'll tell you that you're overreacting, that you're being too sensitive, that you can't trust your own instincts, and over time, you stop trusting them. You start believing their version of the story. You begin to filter everything through their lens, and little by little, your own truth becomes blurry. This is what gaslighting looks like. It's not just about lies. It's about replacing your inner voice with theirs. It's about making you feel that you can't move without their approval. And the worst part is, you start to accept it, not because you agree, but because you're tired. You're tired of defending what you know is real. You're tired of proving that your feelings matter. And in that exhaustion, they win ground. But your truth never leaves you. It's always there, quiet but alive, waiting for you to trust it again. Healing begins the moment you decide that their voice is not yours. It begins when you start questioning not yourself, but them. They don't isolate you by locking doors. They isolate you by planting doubt about everyone else in your life. They whisper that your friends don't really understand you, that your family doesn't know the real you, that other people might secretly judge you. And because you want to protect your heart, you start believing it. You share less. You seek advice from fewer people until suddenly the only voice left is theirs. Emotional isolation isn't about being alone. It's about becoming dependent on a single source of validation. And when that happens, their opinion becomes the truth you can't escape. You start waiting for their approval. You start hesitating before making any move. You begin asking questions you already know the answers to just to see if they agree. This kind of isolation feels like closeness, but it's not connection. It's control disguised as care. It feels like intimacy, but it's a cage. And the longer you live there, the smaller you become. Every compliment from them feels like a rare gift. Every sign of approval becomes the thing you chase. And in chasing it, you forget who you are when you're not trying to please them. The cost of that kind of isolation is your freedom. It's your ability to decide what's true for you. Real love doesn't demand that you cut off your world. Real connection doesn't require you to become invisible. If someone needs to shrink you to feel secure, what they give you is not care but control. They never go after those who are weak or lost. They focus on the strong ones. The ones who are bright enough to make others see their own shadows. The ones who walk with confidence and do not need permission to speak. That strength becomes a threat to those who have not yet faced their own limitations. Your freedom reminds them of the walls they have built. Your voice highlights the silence they have chosen. Your courage exposes their fear. And instead of being inspired, they feel attacked by your existence. So they begin their quiet work, breaking you not because you are fragile, but because you are powerful. They don't try to crush you in one strike. They chip away comment by comment, doubt by doubt, until you start wondering if you're too much. But you are not too much. You are exactly what they wish they could be. They don't hate you because of your flaws. They hate you because of your strength. Because every time you rise, they are reminded of how they've chosen to stay small. And rather than face that, they would rather see you dim your light. This is why you must see their behavior for what it is. It's not about you, it's about them. And the most powerful thing you can do is keep standing, keep shining, and keep being more than what their fear allows. There comes a moment, often quiet and unannounced, when you realize the voice in your head doesn't sound like you anymore. It sounds like someone else, someone who doubted you, someone who made you feel small, someone who questioned every decision you tried to trust. And over time, without you noticing, their words became your thoughts. Their tone became your inner dialogue. Their fear became your logic. That's how the real damage is done, not just by what they said, but by how long you kept saying it to yourself after they left the room. You begin to correct yourself before you speak. You hold back ideas because they might sound silly. You hesitate before reaching forward because something inside you whispers you're not ready. But that whisper isn't yours. It's a memory, a shadow, an old scar that still burns even when no one is touching it. That's how deep the pattern runs. It lives in your nervous system. It lives in your habits. And unless you pause and ask, whose voice is this really? You'll keep following instructions that were never meant to serve you. This is not about blaming yourself for being influenced. This is about waking up. Waking up to the realization that not every voice that sounds familiar deserves authority. Sometimes what feels safe is just what's been repeated long enough. And healing begins when you stop obeying the echoes and start listening to the whisper beneath them, the one that still remembers who you are. The process of reclaiming that voice is not loud. It's not always brave. Sometimes it looks like choosing to speak when you'd rather stay silent. Sometimes it looks like choosing rest when the old pattern tells you to earn your worth again. Sometimes it means rewriting sentences you've rehearsed for years and replacing them with truth, not flashy truth, not perfect truth, just the kind that feels like peace when you say it out loud. And when you begin to recognize the difference between your voice and theirs, you don't just reclaim your thoughts, you reclaim your authority. You remember that your clarity isn't a threat, it's a compass, and it was never theirs to hold. You do not return to who you were. You become someone new, not because you were broken and needed fixing, but because you finally saw the truth about what hurt you, the truth about what you allowed, the truth about what you forgot in order to feel safe. Rising does not begin when the pain ends. It begins when you stop pretending it did not matter. When you stop explaining it away. When you stop minimizing the weight of what it cost you to keep peace that never truly existed. What they tried to take from you was not just your confidence. It was your clarity, your voice, your ability to trust your own experience. And yet here you are, still breathing, still thinking, still holding the thread of who you were before their fear tried to rewrite your worth. That is not weakness. That is strength most people will never understand. Because surviving something that was meant to erase you changes everything. You no longer chase belonging. You no longer beg to be heard. You no longer fight to be seen by people committed to looking away. Instead, you choose to see yourself, to hear yourself, to trust yourself. Again, the power of healing is not found in pretending nothing happened. It is found in remembering everything and still choosing to move forward. Not for revenge, not to prove anything, but because you have outgrown the version of you that was willing to live on someone else's terms. And in that growth, something quiet begins. You speak differently, you walk differently, you choose differently, not with bitterness, but with discernment, not with fear, but with awareness. You are no longer someone who needs permission to take up space. You are someone who knows that presence is not something to earn, it is something to reclaim. There is no dramatic moment when the pain disappears, but there is a moment when it stops leading, when your decisions no longer come from survival, but from wisdom. When your words begin to carry truth again, not because others believe you, but because you do. That is the moment of rising. It does not need applause. It does not need to be noticed. It only needs to be lived quietly, daily, boldly, without asking. Because the most powerful comeback is not loud. It is steady. It is intentional. And it begins when you remember you never lost who you were. You only stopped listening. Now you do. And everything changes.